We're back. This is the Now Morning Show. It's Friday. Would you believe it's the end of the week already? And we have our regular segment from Playground to Podium with Marissa Gibson-Bailey, exercise physiologist and sports scientist. Good morning, Marissa.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
Hey, I feel like I missed you, man. So good to see you.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I know Carrie's jumping right in this morning.
Yes, and
I know.
Yes, we are going to speak about the importance of pre-participation, health screening, and risk assessment when it comes to the athlete and the non-athlete. So, first off, why should one complete a pre-participation risk screening and health screening and risk assessment before participating in physical activity?
I like how you separate the non-athlete and the athlete. Because actually for the athlete, you want to optimize effects of sport participation and training, right? And for the non-athlete, you want to increase individual participation. So, you would start regular, you would want to move from regular to moderate and to vigorous physical activity. So that is really the main goal, actually. But underlying all of that, you will want to identify individuals' increased risk for adverse exercise-related events. And when I say that, I would mean on both sides, prevent sudden death. Important. You want to ensure optimal medical health. You want to ensure that there is minimized risk for injury. You want to ensure that there early recognition of risk or diseases on both sides, right? You want to make sure that you, for example, for the athlete, you want to collect baseline data, which is really important because remember with the athlete, and I would say with the non-athletic population as well, because you would be monitoring. Remember we spoke about that. We spoke about monitoring performance, whether it is for the elite athlete, amateur athlete, or even for the regular individual who just want to move closer to their goal and their objective, which is really, really important. Doing that screening as well, Carrie, would allow for other professionals that you work with to come on board. So, for example, you do a health screening and there is need for a nutritionist to come on board because of what would have been found, or a psychologist, or biomechanics, if you're talking about sport performance. If you're talking about, if you're talking about the non-athlete, there may be other professionals that you'd have to work in tandem with to come on board to give a more holistic intervention.
Now, we've heard over the years that, of athletes suddenly dying, because you brought up that topic just now there.
Yes.
It could be football, it could be track and field, and we've heard of some tragic stories where athletes, suddenly passed away while in the middle of the sport. What are some of the medical conditions that complicate the exercise prescription?
Well, Carrie, you have the cardiovascular diseases, and we all know high blood pressure. There are certain dysfunctions with the heart structure. And remember, we spoke about in training, you remodel the heart, right? Whether if you're doing long distance running or sprinting, there's a difference in how the heart muscle remodels itself. So these are factors, or these are conditions that you'd want to be able to monitor. You'd want to take into consideration, making sure that they don't exist. You have hypertension, arthritis, osteoporosis. These are diseases that are common and that complicates exercise prescription. Diabetes, type 1 especially, right? These are diseases that, or conditions that really complicate stuff, and that is why it's not just for anybody to just prescribe. It's really for those who are properly trained to actually do exercise prescription, especially when you have these underlying clinical conditions.
Right. In exercise or sport setting, for the athlete or non-athlete, what does the health screening and risk assessment look like, or what is it about?
Okay, I will tell you this. This is from my experience and from what I have been doing. So first of all, you don't just come in on the day for your prescription or for your testing or screening. There is a pre-test information that goes on. So you have to know what you need to do before you actually come in. So you have to be properly rested, properly hydrated. These are boxes that you have to tick, and you have to be very honest with the information that you give, right? So once your appointment is given, you come in and you have your screening. For example, you have to do a comprehensive medical history. So there are valid tools, valid questionnaires, valid information that we take from you that we're able to give feedback even to physicians that you work with. After that, you have resting values. So heart rate, blood pressure, you have blood samples, urine samples that we take. And this is beginning ECG as well as for the athletes, as even for the non-athletes as well, because physical activity is being active, right? And then there are the more complicated assessments that you do, right? This would be the densitometry. For example, you have the VO2 max testing. You call that respiratory function. So spirometry, right? All these tools that we use are very objective and valid, right? So that's the order, in that you have your medical, comprehensive medical history being taken, and then you have basic resting values being taken, and then you get to the more complicated examinations and even a fitness test. It depends, right? Because if you're the non-athlete, then we just want to see normal function of the body. But if it's an athlete, it now depends on the sport. It now depends on the position that you play in the sport. That's when you become more specific.
Now, when it comes to the condition of the individual, athlete or non-athlete, well, let's focus more on the non-athlete right now.
Yes.
What are some of the factors that would contribute toward some of the higher risks? The physical factors, not medical.
Well, if you have injuries, and this is where the medical, the exam, the history, getting the history. The athlete has to be honest, first of all, when giving information, because it's the same information that's going to guide the scientists or the physiologist to be able to give you proper recommendation. And this is where you have the risk stratification, because then you have to be classed whether you're low, moderate, or at high risk. This permits proper recommendations coming from both the professionals, whether it's a physician or myself, to give you proper recommendations and guidelines as to how to move forward. So we're looking for things like injury, right? If there are any, remember, non-athletes, for example, are not training the way of athletes. So I'm not expecting them to be at a high fitness level, right? And most times, based on my experience, is that you always have something is wrong, right? And that is really important to catch up on and deal with and used within your prescription, so that you could be able to deal with that part of it as well as achieve the goal that the individual would have set out to achieve.
Right. And with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Of course, we could continue speaking on this, but that's why we have you every Friday, so we could continue going through the topics. But I want to thank you so much, Marissa Gibson-Bailey.
Yes, thank you.
Sports scientist.
I hope that you do your screening as well.
Yes, of course.
Bye, Marissa.
Bye, have a good one.
Bye, Lisa.
All right, so Ainka is already in studio, so that means entertainment news is coming up soon. But for now, we're going to take a short break and come back with much more.